everyone, I'm Kayla.
Hi, I'm Tavis.
Welcome to Stories of Resilience, where we talk about the everyday challenges that people go through and resilience that comes out of it.
We hope to provide you encouragement, hope, and empowerment as you listen to these incredible stories of resilience. Thanks for
Thank you
tuning
tuning
in.
Well, welcome to OCAPICA's podcast channel, Stories of Resilience. And today is a very special day because this is our very first episode for the podcast. And we have a very, very special guest. She is the founder and the executive director of OCAPICA. So, Marianne, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today.
Absolutely, anytime.
Yeah, this is so great. I know for me, it's an honor just to sit here with Marianne and just to dive a little bit into her story and her personal journey. So I'm excited. Hopefully you're excited. Marianne, do you mind sharing maybe briefly about what is OCAPICA? What is OCAPICA doing at this moment?
Sure, absolutely. So OCAPICA is the Orange County Asian and Pacific Islander Community Alliance, and we were started in 1997 because there wasn't a lot of Asian and Pacific Islander resources back then. We saw a lot of hate crimes occurring. There was just so many different things. There was welfare reform, and this, it was just a lot of push to get community members to work 40 hours or more a week. And so we wanted to start an agency that brought everyone together, a lot of other organizations together to advocate for Asian and Pacific Islanders. So we expanded and evolved to do direct services. So we do health, mental health, workforce development, youth and after school programming, youth leadership, civic engagement, and housing.
That's so awesome. We'll get into that a little bit into our episode today. We'd love to hear a little bit more of the impact that OCAPICA is making. It's been almost 30 years.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. But we want to know a little bit more about who was Marianne as a young child? Where did you grow up? What were some of your interests? Just Marianne as a young child and maybe Marianne as a youth. What was life like for you?
Yeah. Sure, absolutely. So I was born in Yuba City, Marysville, California, which is north of Sacramento. And I'm fourth generation Chinese and Japanese. And a lot of the Asians went to Marysville because it's right on the bottom of the Sierras. So it was the gold rush. So my family came in the 1850s.
Oh, wow.
And they went there for, like a lot of Asians went for the gold rush. But what they ended up doing is running a gambling hall and I think selling drugs. But when I grew up, so I have this really proud background of being, some of the first Asian Americans here in California. And my grandfather was one of the first Chinese Americans in World War I for the U.S. Army. And my family helped to build Marysville. But I grew up with a lot of racism. So we had an active Ku Klux Klan. I remember growing up and people would be like, oh, you speak English so well, or, oh, your eyes are so narrow, how can you see? And you internalize all of that. And so from a young child on, I just remember people would try and run us over or would throw things at us or would say, go back to where you came from. And it was just really challenging. So I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to be white. And it really impacted my mental health and well-being because I had a lot of self-hatred. And so I would hide it from my family because I didn't want to hurt them. And I had depression, but I pretended to be fine. And I wanted to be popular. And my mom and dad had always talked to me. My mom is Japanese American, my dad's Chinese American. And they would talk to me about civil rights because their good friends were African American, and they would talk about segregation and the rights of everybody, and they were really into civil rights, into unions, and also my mom was a leader in women's rights.
Wow.
And so she would always take me to meetings. Like when I was 6, I remember going to National Organization of Women meetings. I'd be like, this is so boring, but I think I absorbed a lot of those things about, hey, you should be proud of who you are and you should also think about the rights of yourself and others. And I think that helped to counter some of the things. But it was really challenging growing up with a lot of that. So I had depression and I would, so from sixth grade on, I was drinking, I was using drugs, I had early sex, just a lot of things to hurt myself because I just felt horrible about who I was because I didn't want to be who I was. And that's why I always joke that every program at OCAPICA was meant for me because it's something I needed when I grew up. But you have this rich, incredible history of Asian Americans in Northern California. But when you have a lot of racism and there's hate incidents, hate crimes, there's a lot of racism, systemic racism within the system, it really impacted our family.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Marianne, for sharing that. I know a lot of times when we share our stories, it's not easy for people to be vulnerable and to kind of dive into their history, even their upbringing. And there's a lot of things to unpack there. I know we don't have a lot of time,
Yes.
but just a couple of questions. One that comes to mind to me as you're sharing, Marianne, is, we come from an API background. And a lot of times I feel like in the API population or community, we're more hush-hush. Like, let's not get involved.
Yes.
Let's not cause any conflicts or issues. Let's just live our quiet lives.
Yes.
To hear that your parents were involved and even your mom being part of with the women back in the days, how did they get involved with that? How did they kind of break out of that maybe mold and really get involved in advocacy? Yeah.
So I think one is my parents met in high school. And my mom being Japanese, my dad being Chinese, back then you weren't supposed to get together. It's like different races. And I was like, oh, I see you as the same. But my mom had been disowned by her family for a short time while they got married. And once she had my oldest brother, then everything was fine. But I think that experience of being disowned, my mom really felt like, hey, my family just left me out, and that's not right. And then my parents, as teenagers, their best friends were Black. And she always told me how they took the bus up to Reno. And when they got going into the casinos, they weren't allowed in because their best friend was Black. So they stayed all night at the bus station. She just remembered how awful that was. Also, my mom had been in an internment camp as a Japanese American during World War II. And she remembers, losing your rights, losing everything, being only to take one bag with you, and then coming back and people attacking her, and they always had to walk to school in a group because everyone would throw things at them. And I think her own experience, my dad would tell me, oh, we weren't allowed in here, we weren't allowed outside of Chinatown. They all told me that those experiences growing up, and I think it really impacted them. And they were kind of hippie-ish too, and so I think that's how they got involved in civil rights and also in labor unions too. And that education all my life really influenced me. So I think they always told me, be proud of who you are, be proud of your background, know that how much we've contributed to the development and the growth of the United States, and don't let others put you down and stand up for your rights. Even though I was so scared because I'm like, I'm going to be killed. My mom would be, and she's short, she's like 5 foot, and she would be standing up to people like, don't touch my daughter, what's wrong with you?
Wow.
Not afraid. And I think that really influenced myself and my brothers.
I think it's so amazing to hear that, myself being a parent of 2 young kids, it really gives me like, hey, this is a way that I can maybe show an example in kind of encouraging my kids to be proud of kind of their heritage and their background. And so that's so encouraging to hear, Marianne. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I have a quick story of my mom. When I was 9, she gave me this present for my birthday, and I was like, oh, I got my Barbie Beach bus, and I opened it up and it was books, and I was like, books? And I was like, oh gosh, why would you give me books? You're such an Asian parent. And she told me, Marianne, I want you to look at those books. And they were civil rights books. They were children's civil rights books on Martin Luther King Jr., on I think there's Malcolm X, there's all sorts of books. She told me when I was 9, I was interned in an internment camp, and I lost all my rights. And I want you to know how these rights were fought for, and that there were the Black community and other communities and our own communities that fought for our rights. So don't ever forget that. And there you feel like, wow, when you talk about your kids wanting to teach them, I think books to talk about history is really important.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just got goosebumps right now. I was like, that's amazing just to hear your parents instilling that into you. You also mentioned about mental health and how you're dealing with depression as being one of the mental health challenges. Do you mind maybe not sharing everything, but do you mind sharing a little bit about what that was like for you dealing with mental health challenges, and what were some ways that really helped you, if there were any, to address that?
So growing up, because of all the racism that I experienced and, even death threats, things like that, I internalized all of that. And so I didn't want to be Asian. It's because being Asian meant that I would be attacked and all of the racism. And I didn't really understand that. And so I internalized it. I pretended everything was okay. But inside, I was depressed. I was self-medicating on drinking a lot from 6th grade on. I was drinking, experimenting and using drugs. I had early sex, all sorts of things. I was kind of acting out, but still had good grades. And I was still doing all the things so that my parents would never notice, because I just didn't want to hurt them. And I didn't want to, say anything because I would be afraid my mom, who was such an advocate, would go, into the school and say something. And I didn't want to make it worse. So I just sort of ate it. And I would have upset stomach, headaches, and just, was depressed, but hiding it. So I think what really helped me was, one, joining, different clubs, having my best friend to talk to. I didn't want to talk to my parents about it or any family members, and just keeping busy reading. I started running, and those things really helped. The environment was still really bad, but I think by me taking care of myself and taking that time really helped me. And then I also started talking about my experience. So later on, I started to talk to not only my best friends, but to other people. And as I got older, I was talking about my experience and the trauma I went through. And things like that really, really helped. So later on in life, I started to go to counseling, and I saw mental health clinicians who really helped me. And I had to figure out which mental health clinician was right for me. At first, I had a lot of different people who wasn't the right fit. Nothing against them or anything, but just wasn't the right fit. And I found a counselor that had similar background and could understand, more about what I've gone through, and that was great.
Right. Thank you for sharing. I know sometimes it's, when it comes to the topic of mental health, especially with the API background, sometimes that's difficult to talk about. It's difficult to even bring that up. So I really appreciate you sharing about some of your challenges and how you address that. It really sounds like talking about it was an important factor, as well as having good friends to talk to, and even seeking the professional help from counselors and therapists.
Yes. So, the other thing that really helped was hearing stories from other people who've gone through something similar and seeing I wasn't the only one. And then I also didn't feel like a failure, because I was like, why can't I fit in? Why can't, what is it about me that I'm being targeted? Why can't I just get over it and ignore these things? What's going on? But when I would hear other people's stories, or especially when I heard about Asian American history, that helped me to understand, hey, we're an amazing community. We're so resilient. We've been through so much. And there were so many, civil rights violations. To understand it in that context helped me a lot.
That's so awesome. And I'm so glad you share that too, because this podcast is really about really sharing stories of resilience. And we really hope, as even you're sharing your story and we have others coming to share their stories, that this will inspire hope, encourage, and those that might be feeling a little bit discouraged, down, and maybe they're a little bit worried about even sharing their story. So thank you for that.
Yes, I just want people to know you're not alone, that so much of this is happening to so many different people in the community, whether you're Asian or Black or Pacific Islander or Latino. So many people get attacked and they hide it because they think, I've been through worse, or my community, I just got to keep my head down, be quiet, and just do my work. But the more we talk about it, and the more we talk out about it,
Mm.
I think you feel empowered.
Right.
And that's how you grow resiliency too.
That's a really good word.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing that,
Mhm.
Marianne. As we jump forward a little bit into your life, what really sparked your interest or even your passion for community health, advocacy work, and even starting OCAPICA? Were there any defining moments for
Mhm.
you, and also maybe some key figures and people in your life that really inspired you along the way? I know we heard a bit about your mom, and it
Yes.
sounds like your mom was a big
Yes.
inspiration. Maybe you could share about others that might have helped you along the way and inspired you.
So there were so many people who inspired me and mentored me along the way before I started OCAPICA. And my first job was at APCHO, the Association of Asian Pacific Community Health Organizations in Oakland, Chinatown. And the whole community inspired me. I would see these store owners who didn't speak English but had voting signs up in their stores, who would talk about things that were anti-immigrant, who talked about healthcare. And you saw in all of the storefronts, everyone saying, you know, vote for this, or we deserve healthcare. Healthcare is a right. And I remember my first week on the job, the clinic CEO from downstairs, Sherry Hirota, who's like the godmother of the Asian American and Pacific Islander health movement, she came up and grabbed me and she said, we're going to go protest at City Hall, and we're going to lock arms and talk about universal health care. And this was in the 80s.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, you know. And she just said, don't get arrested. And I was like, okay, yeah, if I get arrested, my parents will kill me. So we went there, and it was the most amazing experience to see Asian and Pacific Islanders, Latinos, Blacks, American Indians, LGBTQ communities, Jewish communities. We were all there together to say healthcare is a right, not a privilege. And this is back in 1988 when universal healthcare wasn't really talked about. And we just talked about healthcare access. And from there, I was just, it was amazing. And with APCHO, I got to travel around the country. And this is when AIDS started. And there were myths about Asian and Pacific Islanders getting HIV. And I was sent, because no one else could go, sent to Washington, D.C. to go advocate, you know, and say, no, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are getting AIDS, and you need to pay attention, and you need to provide federal funds for this. And I met all these amazing people from around the islands, from nationally, and we were all together fighting for the rights of all communities to have access to these funds. And I learned about federal funds. I learned about advocacy. I was visiting with congressional members and with senators. I saw Senator Kennedy at the time, and Edward Kennedy, not the current Kennedy. And I just learned so much about how to do healthcare access. And from there, I moved down to Southern California, where I got mentored by Special Service for Groups with Herb Hatanaka and with Kazue Shibata with Asian Pacific Healthcare Venture. And I had worked at all these places. I worked in Long Beach with Southeast Asian communities and Lillian Liu. So there's these folks who were like in the forefront of healthcare access. And they all mentored me. And I didn't know anything. And I just would be really honest about, I don't know, you know, and they'd be like, we'll help you to understand. And when I moved into Orange County in 1990, I was just like, whoa, there's no federal funds coming in. The community doesn't work together. I've seen Asian Latino communities work together. I don't understand, you know, why we aren't working together. And that just started some ideas around OCAPICA. And that was back in 1990. I got a lot of training from the county, from CalOptima, from these different API clinics, and community organizations. And so when we decided to start OCAPICA, the other issue that galvanized us to start it was the killing of Tien Minh Le. And that was a hate crime against a young Vietnamese American graduate student. And he was skating in Tustin High School at the tennis courts, and he was stabbed to death. I think it was over 90 times he was stabbed to death. And they caught his killer because his killer wrote to his cousin, oh, I killed a Jap. And it was really fun having a ball in Orange County. And he talked about the killing, and he was turned in and caught. So that was one of the issues. The other issue was welfare reform in 1996, and the push to get Asians to work 40 hours a week, even though maybe some communities were new immigrants or new refugees and they just weren't ready yet. And so they were pushed into jobs that they'd never make money. So they were pushed into sewing jobs or manufacturing and putting components together. And we just saw the racism. And it was a lot of people said, a lot of workers were saying when they were placed, they were told, oh, because you're Asian, you're really good at sewing, or you have small hands, you're really good at putting electronic components together. And they were placed in these dead-end jobs where they weren't getting any, paid very small wages, and they weren't getting benefits. But in order to keep their public assistance, they had to do these jobs. So it was a culmination of all of that, my own personal experience of racism, my own personal and professional experiences of being mentored to build coalitions and work together, and then all the things happening in Orange County. A lot of just racism. I thought I was going back 20 years when I moved to Orange County, because someone tried to hit me with their car when I was walking and saying, get out of the way, gook, go back to where you came from. And it just was like, I'm done with this. This is not going to happen. We're going to start something and fight this. And that's how OCAPICA started.
Wow, there's probably so much behind that story, but thank you for sharing that with us. And as I'm hearing you share about how OCAPICA started, I just want to say thank you, Mary Ann. I feel like it sounds like you helped pioneer some of the work that's still going on even to this day in Orange County for our community. And just hearing about all the people that inspired you, mentored you, it's like, oh, I can see Mary Ann carry on that torch and inspiring young people and encouraging others to continue the good work and the impact that has been going on for years. So I just want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for just pioneering that and just exemplifying that to people like us.
Thank
you for that, Mary
Sure.
Ann.
Well, a lot of the programs that we've developed here are programs I needed myself. So it's kind of selfish too. I was like, oh, I needed mental health. Oh, I needed workforce development. I grew up in poverty. So I was just like, oh, all of these things are something that I personally needed. And, going back to mentoring, I learned something new every single day on the job. And what was so amazing is that the community helped us to develop OCAPICA, and especially young people. So a lot of the college students and a lot of young people. And we were in a storefront area before, and there was no safe place to hang out. A lot of youth were being picked up by the cops off the streets. If there were more than 3, they would be accused of being a gang, even if they were college students or honors, high school students. And so they would come over to OCAPICA to hang out, and that's where we would dream, what are we going to do? So you'd have youth coming over in the evenings, hanging out, or on the weekends. We'd have coffee house, we'd have boba, and just they'd be performing. They developed their own programs. Our mental health programs came out of that. We had a young person who had told me that he had wanted to commit suicide, but the only reason why he didn't is because his brother didn't want to leave his younger brother, but his mom had been addicted to gambling. Every day they didn't know what she would sell for gambling. They were left in front of Bicycle Club, which was a gambling hall, numerous times. They grew up there. And he said he just couldn't take it. He was the #1 student at school, early admissions into college, and he just hid it all. And so for me, it was like, oh, that reminded me of how I used to hide my depression. And so it was his story, and he's like, I want to help to develop mental health services for you. And he helped. All of our voting programs started from high school youth who said, we want to do census, we want to do voting, we want to have a voice for our communities, and they galvanized the community. And then, some of our founders, beyond me, Michael Matsuda, who's the superintendent of Anaheim Union High School District, used to hang out on our couch, sitting there, and we would dream, what are we going to do for education? What are we going to do for youth? Ken Inoue, Sora Partanjasiri, Alan Wu, all these people really helped us to develop. So OCAPICA is not Mary Ann, it's not me. It's everyone else. It's everyone who came in to say, we want to change and transform Orange County. We want to make it better. We want to create a safe environment that would support not only Asian and Pacific Islanders, but everybody. Right. So every single staff member, every single board member, every single volunteer has developed something to make a difference in our community.
That is so awesome. to just hear the founder and the executive director of OCAPICA just highlighting the fact that it's a spirit of togetherness. It's a partnership that's helped build this organization, agency, and make an impact that it's still making almost for about 30 years.
Yeah.
So which is amazing. And I know that you mentioned Anaheim Unified High School District and my alma mater, John F. Kennedy High School. But thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I have to say, as one of the employees and team members here on OCAPICA, I sense that. I sense the spirit of togetherness. How do we, even with the different departments that we have in OCAPICA, how do we work together to make a greater impact?
Yes.
So that's so good to hear, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Kind of shared a little bit about how OCAPICA started, what inspired you, and even the people that helped you along the way. I can only imagine maybe some of the barriers and some of the challenges that you faced along the way, but also maybe some of the mental health challenges that you faced as an executive director.
Oh, yes.
You know, so
I feel like a
wondering
failure.
Wondering if you can maybe share with us a little bit some of those challenges and barriers that you experienced, but also as an executive director, what are some of the mental health challenges and what's helped you?
You know, so being an executive director, I thought it would be different. I thought it'd be fun. And it is. I love my job. But, you know, it's really hard. And I didn't know what I was doing. And so some days I would sit at my, I still do. I still sit at my desk thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. But thank goodness for Google and for the internet. But you can look up a lot of things. And so what's funny is people are like, oh, how do you know this? Did you learn it in school? I go, no, I learned it on the internet. You just look it up. And now ChatGPT, I learn everything too. But I think there were so many times when we were challenged, especially when starting. People would say, well, you're not from Orange County, you know, you're American born, you don't, you know, I'm fourth generation. So they're just like, you don't know anything. And then I even got accused of being a communist. And I was like, whoa, you know, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so you always have to take the high road. And so I defend myself, but I always said, you know what, we're just going to do good work and let our work speak for itself. So that's number one. Number two, the other challenges were financial. In 2009, we went through really, really hard times financially, had to cut down on space. We had to lay off a lot of people. We were in debt. And part of that is that I didn't know finance. You know, I'm not a financial person. I'm a health educator. And so bringing in folks like Romina, you know, Peralta, who's our director of finance, she changed everything because she understood how to really run a business. And she set up all the systems, got the audit in place, everything. And someone had told me early on, finance pays for itself. Because you think, oh, I have a grant, I want it to go entirely to the community, I want it to go to program. But you really have to have a balance because finance is the brains and program is the heart. And it won't function without both. And that really changed us, bringing in a strong finance team. Our programmatic team has always been amazing. You know that all of the staff are so giving. They care so much about the community. They're so dedicated. And that's helped with a lot of the challenges too. But as an executive director, it is really stressful. And so I still do, you know, would drive to work and it's my time to be alone, to either listen to a podcast on wellness or on murder. I like murder mysteries and that helps. But the other thing is I used to just cry and let everything out before I got to work because I just would not feel good. And by crying, it was like catharsis to let everything, all the bad energy out. And then I'd feel light, you know, lightness and be like, okay, let me just figure things out. Things are not hopeless or things are not so bad. I can do it. I can figure it out. And I have so many people who will help us. And so many people know so much more than me. So that's the other thing too, is surround yourself with people who know way more. And all of our staff and program directors and everybody knows way more than me. And they teach me every day. So every staff member has taught me something. And I think that helps through the challenges. But as right now with the environment, with the economy, we're going to go through more challenges. And my thing is, you can't give up hope. There's always something that can help. And sometimes you have to say, okay, this was a failure. We just have to move on. And my other thing is, I'm always going to be behind. And the other thing is keep a balance, family first. You know, I kind of started OCAPICA for selfish reasons. One, I needed every program, but two, I had 2 young children and I wanted time with them. So my promise was never to miss any of their school events, and to make everything I could. And I couldn't work in a structure like the county or any place where it was, you know, I wouldn't have that flexibility. And so I think that's another way to stop any barriers or maintain your health and your balance, and always put your family and yourself first. Always think about your own health. Never, you know, because work will always be there.
Right.
And 10 years from now, you're not going to think, oh, I missed that deadline on my report. You know, you're never going to think that. You're going to remember every time you made it for a friend or a child, or, you know, you went on vacation with a loved one. So I think that's what's important to maintain and reduce the barriers.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Marianne. I guess on that note, maybe not just as executive director, but ever since you can look back, even as a young child growing up, what are some, you know, resilience is kind of the core of what we discuss on this podcast. What are some lessons, some values, some insights that you've gained that you hold on to this day?
You know, I really value the community experience. I learned so much by listening to stories and working with community members who've gone through so much and still like are so hopeful. And so when I was starting out, especially when working in Long Beach, when I would hear the stories of the Cambodian, you know, the whole genocide and the killing fields, but how community members really wanted to give back to the community and bring back the arts and music and education, everything that would, you know, all of the people who were murdered were the artists or leaders. And they just taught me so much. So I think all these values and resiliencies I learned by listening to people and knowing how important each story is. The other thing is to remember what community members have gone through to come to us. My thing is every single person who walks through our doors has a story, but they've gone through so many barriers. Let's not be a barrier. And I remember working with a community member who, you know, this one older adult man took 4 different buses and to come to see us. Wow. He got off at the wrong bus stop. He got off 2 miles away, and he walked. And he came up to us, and I think I was so busy, and I was just like, oh, you know, someone's like, oh, he wants to talk to you, and I go, oh, really? You know, I'm so busy. Oh, okay, you know, make it quick. And he had a picture of his grandson, and I was just like, oh, that's nice, you know, okay. And then he told me, I took, you know, I went on 5 different bus routes. I got lost, and then I walked 2 miles to show you this photo. Because your program, Grandma and Grandpa, keep me safe about grandparents, caregiver, how to make sure that their grandchildren are safe, you know, how to avoid drownings and poisonings, and how to do all these different things. I was so inspired by that, and I feel like I'm a better caregiver now. And I wanted to personally come and tell you. And then I was just like, you know, it was like, how selfish of me to think I'm so busy and not listening. And so my values are to listen to every single person who walks through that door, that they might have taken 5 buses. They might have walked 2 or 3 miles. You just don't know what they've gone through. And for them to come through our doors and want services from us is an honor. You know, for me, that's just an honor to be able to serve the community in that way because they trust us. And so the other value is our staff. You know, the trust that you build with the community, there's nothing like it. And community members, there are not a lot of resources, and that's why we started OCAPICA. But for people to come to you means they trust you so much that they're putting, you know, their lives in your hands, not to make you feel guilty, but it's important. And that's the strongest value is value the community, value their stories, and value yourself, and take care of yourself too, because it's hard to serve others if you're not taking care of yourself.
Right. You know, me as a, again, fellow employee at OCAPICA, staff member, just to see that heart, kind of wanting to care for community members, I could definitely see how, you know, where that starts from. And I think that starts from you, Marianne, carrying that heart, carrying that desire, and making sure with OCAPICA, as we provide services, that we do it with a heart that really shows that we care about each individual that, like you mentioned, that walks through the door.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. There might be people who are tuning in today, who are going through maybe adversity, challenges, maybe they're feeling hopeless. What's a message, or what's an encouraging word or words that you like to give them today to maybe instill hope?
I think one is coming and talking to us. You know, sometimes a little bit of information or resources or just an open door really helps. You might be banging your head against the wall trying to find information. Sometimes just getting a fresh perspective, coming into an organization like OCAPICA, talking to one of our team members could really help. And I think we try to make it easier if you can't find information or resources or help, you know, we try to make it easy to find that for you, is one. Two is coming in for counseling. We provide short-term, long-term counseling. And for me, counseling really helped just talking to someone. And it doesn't have to always be long-term, but I've even just talking to somebody here, like I have so many people here on staff who I'll be like, today's an awful day, you know, and they'll be like, what's happening, you know, and just to be able to share that, I think is important. Knowing that you're not going to be judged and that people understand you. I think that all of our staff have come from the community, have been consumers, have experienced things, have navigated themselves or their families through systems of care, and they understand. And so I think just coming in and talking to someone really helps. So I would encourage everybody, reach out to OCAPICA or reach out to any community organization or resource, your church, your temple, your mosque. You know, always just find someone that you can build trust with to just talk to.
Yeah, that is awesome. And if you want to find out more information about OCAPICA, the resources that we provide, you can go to our website, ocapica.org, and you can look at the impactful work that OCAPICA is doing. Not only that, but the resources that are available to you. So we really hope that you would tap into that. A lot of our mental health programs are absolutely free. So that's something to check in if that's something that you feel like may be helpful for you. One last question to end this episode, Marianne. The most important question is, what's an interesting fact about yourself that maybe someone who may not know you may not know about? Yeah.
I love looking people up, and I'm sorry to break any like privacy, but I love looking up people that I know and looking them up online and seeing more about them. So whether it's through social media, through LinkedIn, I love that, and just finding out things that I have common with you. And then I love finding photos of you and making them into glamour shots. And so I love remaking, you know, kind of doing a makeover for people through their photos. And it's really funny. And it doesn't mean that they aren't beautiful how they look, but then I'll add, you know, highlights to their hair or, you know, different things. And I think it's just fun.
Right. I can attest to her skill. I've seen it myself. It's amazing. I don't know how you do it in 5 minutes. You find a photo and you're able to glam it up a bit. So I was quite scared last time. I was like, I hope she doesn't find my photo and glam me up.
You know, I already saw you.
Oh, no. Marianne, thank you so much for just sharing your story, being vulnerable with us. Talking about the different challenges, but also ways that helped you along the way to address those challenges and to maybe not even overcome, but to navigate some of those barriers in your life. And this conversation has been very rich. I think it's been very meaningful. And I really hope that what Marianne has shared, her story, her journey, has brought encouragement and hope to those of you that are tuning in, especially if you're facing challenges in life. you're feeling maybe discouraged or you're feeling hopeless, I really hope this resilient story that Marianne shared will help you to stay resilient. And one day, we believe that your story will also make a powerful impact in another person's life. So want to thank you all for tuning in to today's episode. Thank you, Marianne, once again for just being here with us and helping us launch this podcast. If you want to find out more updates, you want to check out this podcast, you can find us again on our website, ocapica.org. You can find us on our YouTube channel under OCAPICA as well. And also we have a Spotify account. It's going to be OCAPICA Stories of Resilience. Feel free to tune in. And we hope, again, this conversation, this episode was very impactful for you. And look forward to more episodes to come. Thank you so much once again for tuning in.